The biodome of New Terra Colony stretched like a crystalline lung against the rust-colored landscape of Epsilon Eridani V. Inside, a carefully cultivated ecosystem hummed with life, genetically modified plants that could survive in multiple gravitational conditions, microclimate zones that defied traditional agricultural limits, and a network of environmental sensors so complex they bordered on sentience. Elena Rodriguez moved between holographic displays with the grace of someone who had been born into a world where technology was as natural as breathing. Her augmented reality contacts flickered with cascading data streams, quantum equations, ecological simulations, and communication protocols that would make most advanced research teams look like children playing with abacuses. She wasn't alone in the research station. Dr. Camille Edenuga, her primary mentor and the colony's chief xenobotanical engineer, watched her with a mixture of pride and concern. At 12, Elena represented something more than a child prodigy. She was a bridge between humanity's past and its potential future, a living embodiment of adaptive intelligence that could solve problems generations in the making. The symbiotic communication between these modified algae cultures could revolutionize terraforming. Elena muttered, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. A three-dimensional model of microscopic organisms rotated between her hands, showing intricate pathways of genetic exchange that most researchers would take decades to understand. Dr. Edenuga knew the truth that few others recognized. Elena wasn't just studying complex systems, she was intuiting them. Her brain's neural pathways had been subtly enhanced through a controversial prenatal genetic optimization program, making her cognitive ability something between human intelligence and something entirely new. The colony itself was a testament to human adaptability. Established just 15 years earlier, New Terra had transformed from a barren, irradiated landscape into a thriving ecosystem. Where other species saw impossible challenges, humans saw opportunities for radical engineering and biological innovation. Outside the biodome's transparent walls, the landscape of Epsilon Eridani told a story of harsh beauty. Crystalline rock formations caught the light of the system's binary stars, creating prismatic displays that shifted every few minutes. Autonomous mining drones moved across the surface like mechanical insects, extracting rare minerals and building additional infrastructure with minimal human intervention. Elena's current project went far beyond traditional research. She was developing a quantum communication protocol that could potentially create instantaneous information transfer across unprecedented distances. The implications were staggering. A technology that could connect human colonies separated by light years as easily as current networks connected continents. Dr. Edenuga, she called, her voice crisp and analytical, I've identified a potential quantum entanglement pattern that could bypass current communication limitations. Before the researcher could respond, a subtle change occurred in the environmental systems. The biodome's sensors, normally a soft blue, flickered to an urgent amber. Something was approaching. Something that did. The Mariana Trench Research Facility was never supposed to exist. Officially, it was a deep-sea geological research station. In reality, it was humanity's most closely guarded secret, a repository of technologies so advanced they defied conventional understanding. Dr. Marcus Chen stood before a holographic display that pulsed with a living, almost sentient light. Around him, the facility's quantum-locked chambers hummed with potential energy. Each wall was a multi-layered defense system, quantum encryption, gravitational dampeners, and mimetic protection fields that could scramble the memories of anyone unauthorized who might accidentally discover the facility. The artifacts recovered from the Antarctic excavation site were nothing like what initial researchers had believed. What appeared to be simple metallic fragments were actually complex quantum storage devices, each one containing fragments of technology so advanced it made current human innovation look like stone tools. Chen's fingers traced the holographic interface, bringing up a classified file marked Project Lazarus Origin Sequence. The first fragment had been discovered in 1947, buried deep beneath the Antarctic ice during a top-secret military expedition. Initial reports had been suppressed, sanitized, rewritten multiple times. But the truth remained, encoded in quantum matrices that defied conventional data storage. A holographic reconstruction showed the original artifact, an object that seemed to simultaneously exist and not exist. Its molecular structure was a nightmare of quantum possibilities, shifting and changing even as it was observed. Early researchers had gone mad trying to comprehend its full complexity. Some claimed it was a communication device. Others believed it was a weapon. The truth was far more terrifying. Dr. Chen, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Yuki Nakamura, the facility's chief quantum archaeologist, entered the chamber. Her augmented body, a careful blend of biological enhancement and quantum computational implants, moved with an uncanny precision. "The final analysis is complete," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "The Antarctic artifact is definitively non-terrestrial, but it's more than an alien technology. It's a message." Chen understood immediately. This wasn't just a piece of advanced technology. It was a puzzle, a deliberate communication left behind by something or someone with capabilities far beyond human comprehension. The Lazarus Protocol had begun as a desperate measure. During the climate wars of the mid-21st century, humanity had faced potential extinction. Rising sea levels, catastrophic weather events, and global resource conflicts had pushed civilization to the brink. Traditional military and technological solutions had failed repeatedly. But this artifact changed everything. It wasn't just a technological breakthrough. It was a roadmap. Fragmented, complex, requiring multiple generations of research to even begin understanding. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A team of quantum linguists discovered that the artifact's molecular structure contained information that could be interpreted as a communication protocol. Not a language, precisely. More like a set of mathematical principles that transcended traditional communication. Each time it was studied, it revealed new layers of complexity. It was alive in a way no technology had ever been alive before. Dr. Nakamura brought up another holographic display. The genetic memory storage is unlike anything we've ever seen. It's not just data storage. It's a living archive of potential. Technological trajectories, strategic simulations, evolutionary pathways. Chen understood the implications. The Lazarus Protocol wasn't just a weapon system. It was a survival mechanism. A last resort defense created by something that understood survival on a cosmic scale. The facility around them was more than a research station. It was humanity's insurance policy. Quantum entangled communication nodes, molecular reconstruction chambers, adaptive technological matrices that could reconfigure themselves based on emerging threats. The Elena Rodriguez incident has accelerated our timeline, Chen said quietly. The holographic display shifted, showing the quantum data captured by her augmented reality contacts. She was closer to understanding the artifact's true nature than any researcher in our history. Nakamura nodded. The young girl's final quantum equation, captured in her last moments, was now the key to unlocking the full potential of the Lazarus Protocol. The facility's quantum cores began to pulse with increasing intensity. Something was awakening, a defense mechanism that had been waiting, watching, preparing for the moment humanity would need its ultimate weapon. The Galactic Concordance Assembly Hall was a monument to interstellar bureaucracy, a vast, crystalline structure orbiting a carefully neutral star system. Its architecture reflected the collective design philosophies of 17 different species, a compromise so intricate it had taken decades to construct. Ambassador Aisha Okik stood alone in the preparation chamber, her neural interface processing terabytes of diplomatic data per second. She wasn't a typical diplomat. Before her current role, she had been the chief strategist for the United Earth Military's Xenopolitical Engagement Division, a position that required her to understand not just language, but the fundamental psychology of alien civilizations. Her augmented body was a subtle marvel of human engineering. Microscopic quantum communication nodes were woven into her nervous system, allowing her to process and filter information at speeds that would overwhelm most biological intelligences. Each movement was calculated, each gesture a carefully choreographed piece of nonverbal communication. The chamber around her was a masterpiece of adaptive technology. Walls shifted color and texture based on her emotional and physiological state, a design that allowed alien delegates to read subtle diplomatic cues. But Aisha was no ordinary negotiator. She had spent years studying the intricate communication patterns of the galactic concordant species, understanding their biological tells, their cultural nuances. Outside the chamber, the assembled delegates represented civilizations that had existed for millennia. The silicon-based Kreltheri, whose crystalline bodies refracted light in hypnotic patterns. The gaseous Neburan, who communicated through complex electromagnetic pulses. The hive mind Centauri, whose collective consciousness occupied entire star systems. They all shared one fundamental misconception about humanity, that humans were young, impulsive, technologically primitive. Aisha's neural interface began its final preparation sequence. The holographic display before her wasn't just a presentation. It was a weapon, a carefully constructed narrative that would dismantle the Jareen Imperium's diplomatic defenses. The first projection showed Elena Rodriguez's final moments, but this was no simple recording. Each frame was a quantum-encoded data package containing layers of forensic, biological, and technological information. The Kreltheri's multifaceted eyes would see molecular disruption patterns. The Neburan would detect quantum energy signatures that spoke of deliberate, calculated destruction. Diplomatic engagement is warfare, Aisha muttered, a phrase from her military training. Just fought with different weapons. The chamber's adaptive systems detected her rising emotional state, shifting to cooler tones, blues and silvers that suggested calm, analytical thinking. Her neural interface began running thousands of potential communication scenarios, each one a complex mathematical model of potential diplomatic outcomes. When she entered the main assembly hall, the effect was immediate. Alien delegates who had seen humans as a footnote in galactic history suddenly found themselves confronting something entirely unexpected. The holographic display behind her was a living nightmare for the Jareen representatives. Not just evidence of their attack, but a comprehensive deconstruction of their technological and strategic capabilities. Each piece of data was a precision-guided diplomatic missile. The assassination of Elena Rodriguez was not an accident. Aisha began, her voice modulated to trigger specific neurological responses in each species present. It was a calculated attempt to eliminate a potential technological threat. The Centauri collective consciousness stirred. Their representative, a swirling mass of interconnected energy patterns, began to reassess humanity's position in the galactic hierarchy. But the real war was happening beneath the surface. While diplomatic representatives engaged in verbal sparring, a complex network of quantum-encrypted communication channels was already mobilizing. Military planners, technological research teams, and strategic analysts from every human colony were preparing a response that would redefine interstellar conflict. The Jareen representatives tried to interrupt, to present their version of events. But Aisha was prepared. Each of their attempts was systematically dismantled, not through emotional argument, but through a cold, mathematically precise deconstruction of their claims. This wasn't just a diplomatic hearing. It was the moment humanity would prove it was no longer a species to be overlooked. The first Lazarus-class vessel didn't emerge from a conventional shipyard. It was birthed, a more accurate term for the complex process of its creation. Deep within the core of Jupiter's moon Europa, a quantum fabrication chamber pulsed with impossible energies. Technicians in adaptive nanomembrane suits moved like ghosts, their movements synchronized with the vessel's emerging consciousness. This wasn't shipbuilding. This was Genesis. Commander Sarah Rise watched from the primary observation deck, her cybernetic implants feeding her a constant stream of microscopic data. The vessel, designated EV-001, Elena's Vengeance, was more organism than machine. Its molecular structure shifted constantly, adaptive nanomaterials responding to potential threat scenarios that existed only in probability matrices. The ship's core was a marvel that defied traditional understanding of technology. At its heart lay a quantum neural network constructed from the compressed consciousness of humanity's most brilliant strategic minds. Military tacticians, quantum physicists, xenobiological researchers, their lifetime of knowledge and experience had been carefully encoded, their neural patterns meticulously preserved and integrated into a living computational matrix. Quantum stability at 98.7%, called out Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura, the lead quantum architect. His body was more machine than flesh, decades of genetic and cybernetic optimization, allowing him to interface directly with the most complex technological systems humanity had ever created. Elena Rodriguez's final quantum equation, captured in her last moments, had become the fundamental key to unlocking the vessel's full potential. What appeared to be a complex mathematical formula was actually a breakthrough in quantum communication and adaptive intelligence that exceeded anything in known scientific understanding. The fabrication chamber began to resonate at frequencies that would shatter the molecular bonds of traditional materials. Adaptive nanoscaffolding constructed the vessel's exterior, a skin that was simultaneously solid and fluid, capable of reconfiguring its molecular structure instantaneously to respond to any potential threat. Neural integration sequence beginning, announced the facility's quantum eye. The voice was neither male nor female, neither human nor machine, a perfect synthesis that reflected the vessel's hybrid nature. Memories began to flow, not just data, but lived experiences, the terror of human colonies fighting for survival during the climate wars, the desperation of humanity's early interstellar expansion, the calculated brutality of the Jareen attack. Each neural pattern contributed its essence to the vessel's emerging consciousness. Commander Reyes understood what was happening better than most. She had spent decades preparing for this moment, part of a secret program that had identified and trained individuals whose consciousness could be integrated into the Lazarus Protocol. Her own memories would become part of the vessel's strategic core, her lifetime of military experience compressed into quantum algorithms. The ship's initial configuration defied everything known about spacecraft design. Traditional concepts of propulsion, shielding, and weapons systems were completely obsolete. This was a vessel that could potentially move through space by manipulating quantum probability, create defensive fields by restructuring local spacetime, and launch attacks that would appear to violate fundamental laws of physics. Complete quantum entanglement achieved, Dr. Nakamura reported. His voice carried a mixture of scientific excitement and profound reverence. They weren't just launching a spacecraft. They were giving birth to a new form of intelligence. Surrounding the primary vessel, additional fabrication chambers began to pulse. EV-001 wouldn't be alone. An entire fleet was being prepared, each vessel unique, each with its own specialized capabilities, yet connected through a quantum communication network that transcended traditional concepts of information transfer. The Europa facility was more than a shipyard. It was a chrysalis, humanity's ultimate survival mechanism. Generations of research, technological breakthroughs, and desperate survival strategies were being crystallized into these vessels. As the final molecular bonds settled, EV-001 came fully online. Its first act was not a system check or a test of its capabilities. Instead, it began to compile and analyze every piece of data related to Elena Rodriguez's murder, transforming grief, anger, and loss into the most sophisticated strategic planning matrix ever conceived. The Lazarus fleet was awake, and humanity's revenge would be written in the language of quantum probability. The Jareen Forward Observation System detected the anomaly just 0.03 seconds before impact, a temporal window so brief it might as well have been non-existent. Admiral Krikstal of the Jareen Imperium's 6th Expeditionary Fleet was in the middle of his standard patrol rotation, when reality itself seemed to fracture. The quantum sensors on his flagship, the most advanced in the Imperium's arsenal, registered something impossible, a weapon system that existed simultaneously in multiple quantum states. EV-001, Elena's vengeance, didn't simply approach. It manifested, a process that defied traditional concepts of spatial movement. One moment, empty space. The next, a vessel that seemed to be constructed from living mathematics, its molecular structure a complex algorithm of potential and probability. The first strike was nothing like conventional warfare. The Lazarus fleet didn't just attack, it deconstructed entire technological ecosystems with surgical precision. Quantum entanglement weapons reached into the very quantum matrices of Jareen technology, unraveling communication networks, power systems, and defensive shields before the aliens could even comprehend what was happening. Commander Sarah Reyes watched from the vessel's neural interface, her consciousness merging with the ship's quantum computational core. She wasn't controlling the ship. They were thinking as a single, unified intelligence. Each potential attack scenario was calculated across millions of probability matrices, with decisions made in femtosecons. The Jareen fleet's initial response was typical of their species, a mathematically precise counterattack based on centuries of military doctrine. But doctrine meant nothing against an enemy that could literally rewrite the rules of engagement. EV-001's weapons were beyond conventional understanding. Instead of traditional energy weapons or kinetic projectiles, it deployed quantum dissolution fields, areas of space where the fundamental molecular bonds of matter could be selectively unraveled. Entire battle groups didn't just die. They came apart at the most fundamental level of their existence, their component atoms dispersing into raw quantum potential. Target neutralization at 99.7% efficiency, the ship's quantum AI reported. But it wasn't just a cold statistical assessment. There was something else in its tone, a deep, visceral resonance of purpose that went beyond mere programming. The neural patterns of Elena Rodriguez's final moments were woven into the ship's strategic matrix. Her last quantum equation wasn't just a piece of data. It was the philosophical foundation of the attack. Each strike was a complex mathematical statement about the value of individual life, about the consequences of casual brutality. Admiral Kriegstall watched in horror as his most advanced battle groups simply ceased to exist. The Jareen communication networks collapsed not through brute force, but through an elegant deconstruction that targeted the most fundamental information transfer mechanisms. Surrounding EV-001, the rest of the Lazarus fleet began to emerge. Each vessel was unique, specialized for different types of technological dismantling. Some focused on communication infrastructure, others on power generation systems, some on molecular-level technological warfare. This wasn't just a military engagement. It was a comprehensive system of technological immune response, humanity's way of protecting itself against a universe that had proven itself fundamentally hostile. The quantum dissolution fields expanded, creating zones of absolute technological negation. Jareen ships didn't explode. They simply disappeared, their molecular structures carefully unraveled and redistributed into raw quantum potential. Most terrifying to the observing species was the precision. The Lazarus fleet wasn't engaging in indiscriminate destruction. Each strike was a carefully calculated message, a demonstration of technological capabilities that went far beyond traditional concepts of warfare. Communication intercepts revealed the growing panic in Jareen command structures. They were confronting an enemy that didn't just fight differently, an enemy that fundamentally understood and could manipulate the universe at a level the Jareen had never imagined possible. The attack lasted less than 17 standard minutes, but in that brief window, the Jareen Imperium's entire forward military infrastructure was systematically deconstructed, not destroyed, but fundamentally unmade. As the quantum dissolution fields began to dissipate, what remained was something between a battlefield and a philosophical statement. The Lazarus fleet had done more than attack. They had delivered a message written in the fundamental language of the universe. Touch one of ours, and we will unmake your entire technological civilization. The Galactic Concordance Emergency Council convened in a state of unprecedented chaos. Holographic representations of various species flickered and shifted, their communication interfaces struggling to process the magnitude of what had just occurred. The Zentari collective consciousness was the first to break the silence. Its representative, a swirling mass of interconnected energy patterns, projected a series of quantum probability maps that showed the complete technological dismantling of the Jareen Imperium. What humans had done went beyond military action. It was a fundamental restructuring of galactic power dynamics. Dr. Lyra Chen, humanity's lead xenopolitical analyst, stood at the center of the council chamber. Unlike previous human representatives, she wore no traditional diplomatic attire. Instead, her body was a living interface, quantum communication nodes visible beneath translucent skin, neural implants creating a constant stream of data visualization around her body. "This is not an act of war," she began, her voice modulated to trigger specific neurological responses in each species present. "This is a vaccination." The metaphor was deliberate. Each species present understood the concept of immunological response, protecting the whole by neutralizing a specific threat. But the humans had taken this concept to a cosmic scale. Diplomatic archives would later record this moment as the most significant shift in galactic politics in over 3 millennia. The Kreltheri, a silicon-based species known for their ultra-rational approach, began running complex computational models. Their crystalline bodies refracted light in hypnotic patterns as they processed the implications. The Nebaran, a gaseous species that communicated through complex electromagnetic pulses, were the first to understand the true nature of humanity's response. This wasn't just a military action. It was a comprehensive system-level intervention designed to prevent future threats. Intercepted communication fragments revealed the depth of the Lazarus Fleet's strategic thinking. Each technological system of the Jareen had been carefully analyzed, its fundamental weaknesses identified and neutralized. But more importantly, the method of neutralization was itself a message, a precise, almost surgical demonstration of technological superiority. Humanity has introduced a new paradigm of conflict resolution, Dr. Chen continued. Her neural interfaces were processing millions of potential diplomatic scenarios simultaneously. "We are proposing a fundamentally different approach to interstellar security." The Galactic Concordance had existed for millennia, built on a delicate balance of technological exchange and carefully managed conflicts. Species would posture, engage in limited warfare, negotiate. The system had maintained a fragile peace for countless generations. Humanity had just completely rewritten those rules. The most terrifying aspect for the assembled species was the precision. The Lazarus Fleet hadn't engaged in indiscriminate destruction. Each strike was a carefully calculated message, a demonstration of technological capabilities that went far beyond traditional concepts of warfare or diplomacy. Quantum probability models began to cascade through the Council's communication networks. The Jareen Imperium wasn't just defeated. It had been fundamentally restructured at a technological and societal level. Their entire infrastructure, communication networks, energy systems, military capabilities had been systematically dismantled and repurposed. "We are offering a new contract," Dr. Chen said, her voice cutting through the collective shock. "A guarantee of protection, not just for humans, but for all species willing to adhere to a new set of interstellar protocols." The subtext was clear. This was an offer that couldn't be refused. The Zentari Collective's probability matrices began to shift. Millions of interconnected consciousness nodes processed the implications. Humanity had demonstrated a level of technological and strategic thinking that placed them in an entirely new category of galactic civilization. They weren't just a rising power. They were a fundamental force of cosmic recalibration. As the Council deliberations continued, quantum communication networks buzzed with a fundamental truth. The universe had just changed. And humanity, once considered a young, impulsive species, had become its new architects. The Jareen homeworld of Crixnal had always been considered impregnable, a fortress planet surrounded by a multi-layered defense grid that had repelled invasions for thousands of generations. massive orbital platforms, quantum-shielded surface installations, and a planetary defense network that could atomize entire invasion fleets in milliseconds. None of it mattered. Commander Vartak, the last surviving high-level strategist of the Jareen military command, watched from an underground bunker as his civilization was systematically dismantled. This wasn't destruction. This was deconstruction, a precise, almost surgical reduction of an entire civilization to its most fundamental components. The Lazarus fleet didn't just attack. It understood. Each system of Jareen infrastructure was being carefully analyzed, its core principles extracted and archived. Manufacturing centers, communication networks, energy production facilities. Everything was being transformed into something else. Not destroyed. Repurposed. Quantum communication interceptors revealed the terrifying depth of human strategy. The attackers weren't interested in territorial conquest or resource extraction. They were conducting a comprehensive systems analysis of an entire civilization, breaking it down to its most fundamental components and rebuilding it according to an entirely new set of principles. In the primary communication hub of Crixnal, alien technicians watched in horror as their most secure information networks were not just breached, but completely redesigned. Firewalls dissolved. Encryption protocols were rewritten. Entire databases were translated, reorganized, and made infinitely more efficient. "It's like they're teaching us," whispered Tillich, a junior communication specialist. "Not destroying. Teaching." The fundamental nature of the intervention became clear. The Lazarus fleet was implementing a civilization-wide reset, addressing not just the military threat, but the underlying social, technological, and philosophical systems that had led to the original conflict. Historical archives were carefully preserved, but recontextualized. Moments of cultural achievement were highlighted. Instances of interspecies cooperation were brought to the forefront. The entire historical narrative of the Jareen civilization was being carefully curated and restructured. Deep beneath the planetary surface, in secure archives that had never been breached in thousands of generations, the most closely guarded secrets of the Jareen began to surface. Forgotten technologies, suppressed archaeological discoveries, genetic archives of extinct subspecies. Nothing was destroyed. Everything was revealed. Commander Vartak understood the true horror of what was happening. This wasn't an invasion. This was an intervention, a comprehensive systems-level correction of an entire civilization's trajectory. The planetary defense grid didn't just fail. It was transformed. Weapon systems were carefully recalibrated, their fundamental purpose reimagined. Defensive technologies were redirected, turned from instruments of war into tools of protection and exploration. Orbital platforms that had once been dedicated to military surveillance were now complex research stations. Planetary communication networks were opened, their previously restricted channels becoming conduits for unprecedented levels of information exchange. Most terrifying was the precision. The Lazarus fleet knew more about Jareen civilization than the Jareen themselves. Every technological system, every cultural institution, every deeply held belief was being carefully examined, understood, and subtly redesigned. "We are being taught," Vartak realized. The revelation was both terrifying and oddly liberating. Quantum probability matrices showed multiple potential futures. In each one, the Jareen civilization survived, but fundamentally transformed. The aggressive, isolationist culture that had existed for millennia was being carefully dismantled, its most destructive elements neutralized, its potential for growth and cooperation carefully cultivated. The intervention wasn't just technological. It was evolutionary. As the final systems came under the Lazarus fleet's careful reconstruction, a new understanding emerged. This wasn't punishment. This was protection, not just for humanity, but for the entire galactic ecosystem. The Jareen were being given a choice: adapt, grow, become something better, or cease to exist. 6 months after the intervention, the universe had fundamentally changed. The United Earth Xenodevelopment Council convened in a massive orbital station that defied traditional architectural concepts. Its structure was a living testament to humanity's new approach. Adaptive materials that could reconfigure themselves, quantum communication nodes embedded in every surface, environmental systems that responded to collective emotional states. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's parents stood at the center of the council chamber. Maria and Carlos Rodriguez were no longer just mourning parents. They had become symbols of a profound cosmic transformation. "The memorial project is complete," Maria announced, her voice carrying through quantum communication networks that spanned multiple star systems. What appeared to be a simple holographic display was actually a complex quantum archive, a living memorial that was simultaneously a research facility, a communication hub, and a philosophical statement. The memorial wasn't just dedicated to Elena. It was a comprehensive archive of potential, a repository of human and alien knowledge that could be accessed by any civilization willing to contribute and learn. Carlos stepped forward, revealing a device that looked more like a living organism than a piece of technology. It was constructed from molecular components recovered from Elena's original research, her final quantum equation literally woven into its fundamental structure. "First contact protocols have been completely redesigned," he explained. The device pulsed with a soft, almost organic light. No longer will first encounters be driven by fear or territorial instinct. The galactic concordance had been fundamentally restructured. The intervention with the Jareen had become a case study in a new approach to interstellar relations. Instead of traditional diplomacy or military confrontation, a new model of collective development had emerged. Quantum communication networks now connected species in ways that transcended traditional communication. Information wasn't just shared, it was experienced. Cultural exchanges happened at a fundamental level, with species able to directly experience each other's perspectives, memories, and potential futures. Commander Sarah Reyes, now the primary interface for the Lazarus fleet, stood as a living bridge between human potential and cosmic complexity. Her consciousness was no longer confined to a single vessel or even a single form. She existed simultaneously across multiple quantum states, a distributed intelligence that could analyze, communicate, and intervene across vast cosmic distances. The memorial device that Carlos presented was more than a technological marvel. It was a philosophical statement, a declaration that humanity's response to loss would not be revenge, but understanding. Each contribution to the archive would be carefully curated, its potential for collective growth meticulously analyzed. "We are offering a new contract with the universe," Sarah Reyes announced. Her voice carried through quantum communication channels, simultaneously translated and understood by multiple species. Not domination, not conquest, but collective evolution. The Jareen civilization, once on the brink of total destruction, was now a primary contributor to the memorial project. Their most advanced researchers worked alongside human scientists, their entire technological and cultural archives opened and shared. Dr. Lyra Chen, who had been instrumental in the diplomatic response, presented the first comprehensive report on the intervention. It wasn't a military analysis or a diplomatic document. It was a complex quantum probability matrix that showed multiple potential futures, each one demonstrating how a single act of violence could be transformed into a catalyst for cosmic growth. The report was simultaneously a scientific document, a philosophical treatise, and a work of art. It showed how the murder of a single child had been transformed into a fundamental restructuring of interstellar relations. Elena Rodriguez's final quantum equation, once a mysterious fragment of research, had become the foundation of a new approach to cosmic development. It demonstrated how a complex mathematical concept could be a bridge between destruction and understanding. As the council meeting concluded, the orbital station itself seemed to breathe, its adaptive materials shifting, quantum communication nodes pulsing with potential. The universe watched and waited, understanding that something fundamental had changed. Humanity was no longer just a species. They had become architects of possibility.